Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. So, I've been doing a little bit of machining. This is some bits of aluminium that I've hacked out with a jeweler's saw, really useful tool. And I just cut these out of the aluminium and then filed it to be completely true on all edges. And then I used my milling machine. I know many of you haven't got a milling machine, but you can link drill and then file. But the milling machine did it in 2 minutes, whereas link chain drilling and filing would have been a lot longer. So anyway, this is what I've come up. Sorry, I should start again. Welcome to the channel. This is my solution for making an adjustable lead out line or guide. With control line, it's quite important, in fact it's very important, where the lead out is for the control line lines. And there's usually two. Elevator, it goes to the bell crank on 2 wires, as you've seen in the previous videos. I don't like to use 2 lead out holes, a front and a back. I don't feel it's needed. I use just one, and I bring both lines through the same hole. It does mean there's a little bit of friction of the 2 lines rubbing against each other, but I don't find it's an issue at all. Now, the reason for the lead outs, my understanding of how they work, is that it determines how much the model swings and pulls out. Obviously the C of G and the lead out line will form a line. So if the lead out line is in front of the C of G on the port wing, then the aircraft will swing more towards the centre, not into the circle, but it will pull it slightly left, and you're flying round in left-hand circles. So if you move the lead out guide further back, then what you'll do is you'll increase the line tension, you'll increase the pull on the line, and this is what you do when the weather's calm or when it's windy. If it's windy, you want plenty of line tension. So what I've done, I've come up with this little gadget for the 2 pieces of aluminium. So if I put an M3 screw through there and a nut on the back, I wanted to use a nylock nut because it's absolutely critical that these do not come undone. It'll really ruin your day. So I think what I'll do is I'll just make sure that they're nice and snug, because these are just not quite long enough for a nylock to go on the back. So I'll just make sure these are snug before every flight. And then once I'm happy with the position of these, I'm going to use the thread lock, not the one that locks the screws permanently, but the one that creates quite a bit of friction. So you can undo it if you have to, but you have to sort of break the seal and then re-thread lock it if you ever have to do anything. I've found that I've never had to adjust mine. I don't know whether I've just been lucky with the settings or not, but anyway, that's the assembly. The lines go through here. Now, the line is actually a loop of wire wrapped around what looks like one of those, well, let me go and get one. Rather than try and describe it, let me show you. So these are, I don't know what they're called. I call them thimbles, but I'm not sure if that is the right name. But this is a thimble, and it's got a channel all the way around the outside. Let me go and find a piece of wire and I'll show you how it works. So here we have some control line lead out type line. This is a very heavy one. It's not usually this heavy. So what you do, if you want to crimp it, which is how I'm going to do it on here, you take a little tiny section of aluminium tube. You pretend this is an aluminium tube. It's not, it's a guide for wingtips, but just ignore that. So what you do is you thread your aluminium tube or brass tube through there, and then you thread it back through to form a loop, and then you place this little ferrule or thimble, whatever you want to call it, eyelet, I don't know, in there, and then you pull the thing tight and you squash the tubing. Okay, and that's the termination for the end of the line. So what has to happen is when you rig the model, and this is attached to the model, you need to feed the lines through to the bell crank and to the connector. So what happens is it goes through that little gap there, which I've now realised is not quite big enough, but it will be. I'll just open that slot out a little bit more. So it goes through that way and then it twists flat, or it doesn't really matter. So the line, when it passes through there, can go slightly up and down, which isn't too important, but fore and aft it's much more restricted, and that's the more important, is the fore and aft. So that's what this thing does. So you alter the angle or the amount that is forward or back on the wing chord to alter the angle of the line coming off the model. And the more that angle alters whether the model pulls out or pulls less. So what you do is you set the most forward point to be where the model would be pulling least. And then if the wind comes up and you need to increase the line tension, then this goes back. So there you go. That's what this little device does. And I think that's a nice little neat way of doing it. None of this is judged in scale competition. Anything to do with the lines and the guides and the bell crank coming out is judged. However, the tip weight, which is what I'll come on to next, it is part of the aircraft and you do have to hide it as best you can. If you need to alter the tip weight, then for control line stunt models, for example, they usually have a box, and you take the lid off the box and you put more lead in or you take lead out. And I think the amount of lead you need, again, I'm not an expert on this, but the amount of lead you need should equate to the length or the weight of the control lines that you're flying on. So if you're on 60-foot lines, you need less lead weight on the tip. If you're on 70-foot lines, you'll need a bit more. I'm not sure how critical that is. I put a little bit of weight on the tip line so that it flies nice and level, and don't worry about it any more than that. So there we go. But because this model flies RC as well, I need the ability to take that tip weight back out again, should I want to fly at RC. So what I'll do on this occasion to fly at control line is probably put the weight in or tape the weight to the bottom of the wing while we do the test flights. And then once I know how much that weight is, then we'll seal it into the wingtip. And if I want to fly at RC, I'll dig it out somehow. But anyway, I'm waffling on. Let's fit this to the wing, to the port wing, and we'll see how it goes. So what I've done with the wingtip, there's a section of blue foam out here that's been glassed. All I did was use one of these files to just gently file along the surface until I broke through the glass fibre, and then I kept filing down to form the slot. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to tease some epoxy into that slot. I'm just going to let gravity do much of the work for me, and just drizzle it in there. Now this doesn't have to actually be really super strong, but you don't want it to come out, but the loads on it are not really that high. The only time there is a high load on it is if suddenly the lines go slack and there's and then they tauten, which can happen with control line. The lines just go slack because the wind grabs it, blows the model towards you. As it goes past you, the lines tension again, and you're frantically stepping backwards to try and get the line tension back. That's when it can snatch. And if the model in that time has dipped a wing, then when it snatches, this lead out will take the load of trying to level the wings back out again. So it doesn't have to be mega strong. Most of the time it's not actually really needed to give impart any strength. So then we put the lead out device adjuster on here. I've drilled some holes, and they're just to sort of put glue in so that as they glue they'll kind of anchor a little bit to the foam, But again, as I said, it's not that important. They don't have to be that strong. So we'll just put some on there. And then this sits down in that slot. Like that. Oops. And what I've done is I've actually made it more or less level. It doesn't need to be, but aesthetically my OCD will probably get really upset if it's not completely level. The rearmost hole, I noticed, is just poking out if I do that, so I might go back in and just make it level with the wing surface. That'll be fine. So all we got to do is just let that set. In fact, I'll see if I can just feed a little bit of in that joint there. Smooth it out as best I can. That should do it. And then as that's adjusted, we can either bring it forward or back. And it's nearly at its most rearmost point now. If the CFG is around here, then you know that would be quite substantial tension on the lines with it back that far. So the idea is that it goes forward probably to about here, and that's probably where I'll start. I might even start there and just accept a really heavy pull for that first lap or two. I have a throttle so I can land again and adjust it. Probably the next video will be the test flight at Buckminster next week when we have a go in the circle. See how it goes. Alright, nice quick video. If you've enjoyed it, click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.